My mother chased me with scissors because I wore the wrong bra. I am a 19-year-old trans man, which means I was assigned female at birth. Growing up, I always felt different and uncomfortable in my own skin. It wasn't until my teenage years that I began to understand why. I realized I was transgender. My gender identity as a man did not match the sex I was assigned at birth. For years, I confided in my close friends about my true identity. They were supportive and understanding, using my preferred name and pronouns when we were together. Their acceptance gave me the courage I needed to finally come out to my family. When I was 16, I decided it was time. I had spent countless nights lying awake, rehearsing what I would say and imagining every possible reaction. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't keep living a lie. One morning, I woke up with a sense of determination. Today was the day. I went downstairs to find my mom in the kitchen, sipping her coffee. My heart raced as I approached her, my palms sweaty and my throat dry. "Mom, can I talk to you about something important?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. She looked up at me, concern etched on her face. "Of course, honey. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Mom, I'm transgender. I've known for a while now that I'm actually a guy. I know this might be a lot to take in, and it's okay if you're not ready to accept it right away. We can take things slow, maybe start by using different pronouns for me, and eventually using my preferred name. I can't keep pretending to be someone I'm not." I braced myself for her response, hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. I knew this was a lot for her to process, and I was willing to give her time to adjust. But nothing could have prepared me for the reaction that followed. My mom's face contorted with anger and confusion. She slammed her coffee mug down on the counter, the hot liquid sloshing over the sides. "What are you talking about?" she shouted, her voice filled with rage. "You will always be a girl. You can't change that. It's just your friends putting these crazy ideas in your head. I will never support this nonsense." Tears welled up in my eyes as her words cut deep into my heart. I tried to explain, to make her understand, but she wasn't listening. Instead, she stormed out of the kitchen and returned a moment later with one of her bras in hand. She threw the bra at me, the fabric hitting me in the face. "Put this on," she demanded, "and give me all your sports bras. You won't be needing them anymore." I stood there stunned, clutching the bra in my trembling hands. I wanted to argue, to stand up for myself and my identity, but the look in her eyes told me it was useless. With tears streaming down my face, I turned and ran upstairs to my room, slamming the door behind me. As I sat on my bed, sobbing into my pillow, I felt a crushing sense of despair wash over me. This was not how I had hoped my coming out would go. With a heavy heart and shaking hands, I changed out of my comfortable sports bra and into the bra my mother had thrown at me. The fabric felt foreign and constricting against my skin, a constant reminder of the identity I was being forced to conform to. As I gathered up my sports bras to hand over to my mom, a sudden thought struck me. I couldn't let her take away every last piece of my true self. I quickly stashed one sports bra in the back of my bathroom cabinet, hidden behind the towels and toiletries. It was a small act of defiance, but it gave me a glimmer of hope in the midst of my despair. I made my way back downstairs, the remaining sports bras clutched tightly in my hands. My mother was waiting for me, her arms crossed and her foot tapping impatiently. I handed her the bras, my eyes downcast and my shoulders slumped in defeat. She snatched them from my grasp, her lips curled into a sneer. "Stop crying," she snapped. "It's just a bra, no big deal. You're making a fuss over nothing." Her words stung, but I bit my tongue and held back the retort that burned in my throat. I knew arguing would only make things worse. I turned and walked back upstairs to my room, feeling utterly broken and alone. Once I was safely behind the closed door of my bedroom, I let the tears flow freely. I sank to the floor, my back pressed against the wall, and hugged my knees to my chest. How could my own mother be so cruel, so unwilling to accept me for who I truly was? As I sat there, the weight of my hidden sports bra seemed to grow heavier with each passing minute. I couldn't just leave it there, a secret symbol of my resistance. I needed to wear it, to feel the comfort and security it provided, even if only for a little while. I crept into the bathroom and retrieved the sports bra from its hiding place. With trembling fingers, I put it on, feeling a sense of relief wash over me as the familiar fabric hugged my chest. It was a small victory, but it gave me the strength I needed to keep going. I spent the next few hours in my room, trying to process the events of the morning and figure out my next steps. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, constantly hiding and pretending to be someone I wasn't. But I also knew that my mother's reaction was just the beginning of the challenges I would face as a transgender person, in a world that often misunderstood and rejected people like me. As the afternoon wore on, I heard my mother's voice calling me from downstairs. "Come down here," she yelled. "Your ex-stepdad wants to talk to you." I hesitated, fear and dread coiling in the pit of my stomach. I knew my ex-stepdad shared my mother's conservative views, and I couldn't imagine he would be any more accepting of my identity than she had been. But I also knew I couldn't hide forever. With a deep breath and a silent prayer for strength, I made my way downstairs to face whatever lay ahead. Little did I know the worst was yet to come. As I descended the stairs, I could hear my mother and ex-stepdad talking in hushed tones. Their voices grew louder as I approached, and I could make out snippets of their conversation. "Can't believe she's doing this. Needs to be set straight. Teach her a lesson." My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped into the living room. My mother and ex-stepdad were seated on the couch, their faces stern and unforgiving. I stood before them, my hands clasped tightly in front of me, bracing myself for whatever was to come. My ex-stepdad spoke first, his voice cold and dismissive. "Your mother tells me you think you're a boy now. Is that true?" I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. "Yes," I stammered. "I'm transgender. I've always felt like a boy inside, even though I was born in a girl's body." he scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You can't just decide to be a different gender. God made you a girl, and that's what you'll always be. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back, determined to stand my ground. It's not a choice, I insisted. It's who I am. I can't change that, and I shouldn't have to hide it. My mother's eyes flashed with anger as she noticed the outline of my sports bra beneath my shirt. What are you wearing? She demanded, her voice rising with each word. I told you to get rid of those things. Before I could respond, she lunged at me, her fingers clawing at my shirt. I stumbled backward, trying to push her away, but she was relentless. She grabbed the fabric of my shirt and yanked it upward, exposing the sports bra underneath. I won't have my daughter parading around like some kind of freak, she screamed, her face contorted with rage. I tried to fight back, to pull my shirt back down and defend myself. But my mother's grip was too strong. She tore at the sports bra, her nails digging into my skin as she tried to rip it off my body. Panic and fear surged through me, and I lashed out, pushing her away with all my might. She stumbled backward, caught off guard by my sudden show of strength. I took advantage of the momentary reprieve and ran for the stairs, desperate to escape the chaos and violence. But my mother was quick to recover. She chased after me, her footsteps pounding on the stairs behind me. I could hear her screaming obscenities, her voice growing louder and more unhinged with each passing second. I reached the top of the stairs and darted into the bathroom, slamming the door shut behind me and locking it with trembling hands. I pressed my back against the door, my heart racing and my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. But my moment of safety was short-lived. My mother's fists pounded against the door, the wood shuddering under the force of her blows. "Open this door right now," she demanded, her voice a chilling mix of anger and desperation. I could hear her rummaging around in the hallway, and then the sound of metal scraping against metal. My blood ran cold as I realized what she was doing. She had grabbed a pair of scissors from the kitchen, and she was going to use them to break into the bathroom and finish what she had started. I braced myself, tears streaming down my face as I prepared for the inevitable confrontation. I knew there was no escape, no way out of this nightmare. All I could do was pray for the strength to endure whatever lay ahead. The sound of the scissors scraping against the lock filled the bathroom, echoing off the tiled walls and sending shivers down my spine. I pressed my body harder against the door, as if my weight alone could keep my mother at bay. But it was no use. With a triumphant shout, my mother burst through the door, sending me sprawling to the floor. The scissors glinted menacingly in her hand as she towered over me, her eyes wild and her chest heaving with rage. "You think you can defy me?" she screamed, spittle flying from her lips. "You think you can just decide to be a boy and everything will be okay?" She lunged at me, the scissors aimed directly at my chest. I raised my arms to protect myself, but she was too quick. The sharp blades sliced through the fabric of my sports bra, cutting it away from my body in jagged strips. I screamed in pain and fear as the scissors grazed my skin, leaving behind thin lines of blood. My mother's fingers dug into my flesh as she tore at the remnants of the sports bra, her nails leaving angry red marks in their wake. "Please stop," I begged, my voice hoarse and choked with sobs. "You're hurting me." But my pleas fell on deaf ears. My mother was lost in her own world of anger and betrayal, a world where I was nothing more than a disobedient child who needed to be punished and put in my place. She grabbed my shirt and yanked it over my head, leaving me exposed and vulnerable on the cold bathroom floor. The scissors clattered to the ground beside me, and for a moment, I thought the worst was over. But then my mother's hands were on me again, her fingers digging into my bare skin as she dragged me to my feet. "You will never be a boy," she hissed, her face just inches from mine. "You will always be my daughter, and you will learn to act like it." She shoved me hard, sending me crashing into the bathroom mirror. The glass shattered around me, shards raining down on my naked skin like 1,000 tiny knives. I fell to the floor, my body curled in on itself as I tried to shield myself from the onslaught of pain and humiliation. I don't know how long I lay there, sobbing and bleeding on the bathroom floor. Time seemed to lose all meaning as I drifted in and out of consciousness, my mind unable to process the horror of what had just happened. When I finally came to, I was alone. My mother had left me there, broken and battered, as if I were nothing more than a discarded piece of trash. I dragged myself to my feet, my body aching with every movement, and stared at my reflection in the shattered mirror. I barely recognized the person looking back at me. My face was swollen and bruised, my eyes red and puffy from crying. My chest was a mess of cuts and scrapes, the skin raw and tender where the scissors had torn through my flesh. But even in that moment of devastation, I knew I couldn't give up. I had to keep fighting for who I was, no matter how much pain and rejection I faced along the way. I had to hold on to the hope that someday, somehow, I would find acceptance and love for the person I truly was. With shaking hands, I gathered up the shreds of my sports bra and my tattered shirt, wrapping them around my battered body like a makeshift bandage. I stumbled out of the bathroom and back to my room, locking the door behind me and collapsing onto my bed. As I lay there staring up at the ceiling and trying to make sense of the nightmare I had just endured, I made a silent vow to myself. I would never let anyone else's hatred or ignorance define me. I would never stop fighting for my right to be true to myself, no matter the cost. For I knew that even in the darkest of moments, even when the world seemed to be crumbling around me, I had to hold on to the one thing that could never be taken away from me: my identity, my truth, my very essence as a human being. In the days and weeks that followed the traumatic incident with my mother, I found myself struggling to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. The physical wounds began to heal, but the emotional scars ran deep, leaving me feeling lost and alone in a world that seemed determined to reject me at every turn. I knew I couldn't stay in that house any longer, not with the constant threat of violence and abuse hanging over my head, but I also knew that leaving would mean giving up everything I had ever known, from the comfort of my childhood bedroom to the familiarity of my daily routine. It was a daunting prospect, but I knew I had no choice. I had to get out, to find a place where I could be myself without fear of retribution or harm. So I started making plans, squirreling away money from my part-time job and researching LGBTQ+ support groups in the area. It was through one of these groups that I first met other transgender people like myself, people who had faced similar struggles and overcome unimaginable obstacles to live their truth. They welcomed me with open arms, offering guidance and support as I navigated the complex process of transitioning and building a new life for myself. With their help, I was able to find a safe place to live, a small apartment in a part of town known for its diversity and acceptance. I started attending therapy sessions to work through the trauma of my past and develop coping strategies for the future. And I began the long and often painful process of physically transitioning, taking hormones and undergoing surgeries to align my body with my true gender identity. It wasn't easy, and there were many days when I felt like giving up. The road to self-acceptance was long and winding, filled with setbacks and challenges at every turn. But through it all, I held on to the love and support of my chosen family, the friends and allies who stood by me no matter what. And slowly but surely I began to heal. I started to see myself not as a broken and damaged person, but as a survivor, a warrior who had fought tooth and nail for the right to be myself. I learned to love and accept every part of myself, from the scars on my chest to the strength in my heart. As I looked to the future, I knew there would be more battles to come. The world was still a hostile place for transgender people, and I knew I would face discrimination and prejudice at every turn. But I also knew that I was not alone, that there was a community of people out there who understood my struggles and supported my journey. And so I pressed on, determined to live my life to the fullest and to be a beacon of hope for others who were struggling to find their way. I spoke out about my experiences, sharing my story with anyone who would listen in the hopes of creating a more accepting and inclusive world for all. For I knew that my story was not just my own, but a part of a larger narrative of resilience and resistance, a narrative that spoke to the unbreakable spirit of the human heart and the power of love and acceptance to transform even the darkest of circumstances. As I looked back on the journey that had brought me to this point, I felt a sense of pride and gratitude wash over me. I had come so far, overcome so much, and emerged stronger and more authentic than ever before. And I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with my head held high and my heart full of hope. For I was a transgender man, a survivor, and a force to be reckoned with. And nothing, not even the hatred and ignorance of the world, could ever take that away from me.